we are deep into award season. It is mid-December, so all the folks are coming out with their nominees and their winners, including us at the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. We all got together in a room for the first time in 4 years. All of us in a room, and we ate snacks and lunch and whatnot. We also picked a bunch of winners. A surprise to me, I was surprised at how well The Zone of Interest did with us. It won Best Picture, Best Director for Jonathan Glazer. Sandra Hüller was one of our 2 lead performance winners for Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall. And then also we gave it our award for its music/score with a special commendation for the sound designer. So that was pretty dominant. We'll have a review of The Zone of Interest for you on Friday. Yes. It is harrowing, and it's a movie that if you're going to see it, you need to see it in a theater.
I would agree with that, yes. But it just get ready for it to be real intense, because it is. Also honored by LAFCA this weekend was Emma Stone's performance in Poor Things, which was also honored for its cinematography from Robbie Ryan. Barbie was honored for production design. Supporting performances went to Davine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers, and Rachel McAdams for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Screenplay to Andrew Haig for All of Us Strangers, and other thing. Anatomy of a Fall was our best film not in the English language because we gave Best Picture to Zone of Interest, right? Yeah. I'm sure I'm leaving something out.
And then your favorite. Yeah, your favorite. I mean, the new Frederick Wiseman, Menu Plaisir, was our documentary winner.
Yes, and Boy and the Heron, which we reviewed last week, was our best animation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, we definitely weren't going to pick Killers of the Flower Moon. I think whether we say the words out loud or not, like we never want to pick what New York picks. But I just think also our tendencies tend to go toward foreign stuff.
It's true.
Weird, challenging stuff. And so like some of the notable movies that got nothing from us today, but were or yesterday or Sunday, whatever day it was.
I know. It's all a blur.
Movies that it's a blur, but movies that, have been in the awards consideration in general, but we're also in the awards discussion on Sunday here and there. Oppenheimer, Maestro, May, December, some of the movies that are big this year that, since, were in the mix, but missed it.
And they had some pockets of support, certainly. And I don't know that LAFCA is completely knee-jerk about not wanting to repeat New York. There have been years where we both share stuff. But I think at the same time, it's not a factor, perhaps, in deciding how things go. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny. Every year people come out, it's a terrible year for movies. And I always feel like at any point in a given year, I've always got a couple of things I can recommend to people. And certainly at the end of the year, when they really just cram in all of this sort of awardsy stuff, and not that all of it's good, but quite a bit of it is. And I mean, I have to sit down and do my top 10 list, and I have a lot of contenders, so there was a lot to pick from this year.
Yeah, I agree. So that's all good. Our awards dinner is next month. We get all gussied up and we eat. And we celebrate people and the cinema. And then also this week we had Golden Globe nominations. The Golden Globes are back. Whether you're ready for them or not, whether they matter or not.
I don't know.
I don't think I even knew this was coming out. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, right, Golden Globe nominations or my social media feeds. So they have expanded their membership from the, 87 some odd random people to 300 people, and they have supposedly diversified their membership, and they're all on the up and up now. And so some of their picks were, the kinds of picks that you see during award season. Barbie, Oppenheimer, Celine Song and Greta Gerwig both got Best Director nominations. And so I just don't think it matters.
I mean, I think the idea of the Golden Globes being not a joke just sort of means they're another also ran. The thing about the way that award season is stacked up, and I include LAFCA in that. I mean, I think see more movies than most Academy members and more movies than most, Golden Globes members. But I think that the way that people talk about award season, it's all rolling downhill into the Oscars, and the Oscars as the end point is all most people seem to care about. I mean, I'd love to go through after LAFCA votes and see what the online chatter is and what the coverage is. And so often it's about how often do we predict who gets nominated for Oscars, and how often do we predict what wins an Oscar? And I'm like, well, that's all well and good, but what if we just talked about the fact that we like this movie enough to give it an award, and that's that in and of itself should count for something. But I don't know. It's a mostly nonsense season. What I do like about LAFCA giving awards is I think that it does point regular viewers to see films that maybe they didn't know about or they hadn't gotten around to yet. If it also happens to point Academy voters in that direction too, well, lovely.
And I always like, and I've said this so many times, I was like that we will do some really out of the box choices that maybe weren't even on people's awards radar, notably like Tom Hardy for Locke is one of our favorite choices, I think, in the Best Actor category. So that is all happening. Yeah, but the Golden Globes to me, like they are not that far removed from being a whole bunch of hacks on the take. And so it just, I mean, maybe they'll prove themselves to be a legitimate organization in time, but it is too soon.
Sure.
Speaking of The Boy and the Heron, it opened at #1 at the box office. This is Hayao Miyazaki's first time with a movie at the top of the box office ever in his long and storied career. The Boy and the Heron opened with 12. Yes. Okay. In the United States, I should specify that.
I mean, obviously in Japan, his films are very often not only opening big at the box office, but I know there have been times in history where like Spirited Away was the highest grossing movie in Japan ever, and so I don't know where Boy and the Heron is right now internationally, but yeah, for him to top the US box office for the first time, a very big deal, and it's the first non-sequel anime to top the box office in this country as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So apparently his last film, because it's been 10 years, The Wind Rises was 10 years ago, that made like 5.3 in the entirety of its run domestically.
Right.
And this has made 12.8 million in its first weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that G Kids has done a really great job of keeping his films in circulation. I mean, not just putting out really gorgeous Blu-ray sets and stuff, but there are theatrical reissues of his catalog all the time, of the Ghibli catalog. And in the same way that when you and I were kids, like Disney movies would re-emerge in theaters every 7 years, and it was an event. I think that because these movies pop up every so often, you have a generation of anime fans who have become parents who are now taking their kids. And so the fact that a new Miyazaki movie is opening is a big deal. And also Wind Rises is something of an anomaly for him in that it was, not a fantasy. It was kind of a biopic practically. It had some fantasy elements to it. But this is, I think, more in the wheelhouse of his like most successful films.
Yeah. And a lot of the art house movie theaters that we have done Movie House shout outs for will from time to time do a Miyazaki retrospective, keeping all that wonderful film out there for the world to enjoy. You've got to subscribe if you have not subscribed to us yet, though, because we will always review something really cool and special like The Boy and the Heron. We reviewed that last week. So make sure you stick with us. Also on our Patreon, we do Bridgerton. It's one of the many TV shows we have done recaps of. We just found out today that Bridgerton season 3 will have a 2-part premiere, like 2 big chunks, as opposed to like dumping the whole 8 or 10 episode run all in one day. You get part 1 on May 16th, part 2 on June 13th of 2024. There'll be 4 episodes each. And this season is going to focus on Penelope and Colin and how will she keep her identity a secret, her true identity. I don't want to ruin it for you guys who haven't seen it yet.
But if you know, you know. No, I think it's great.
If you know, you know.
I think it's great that Netflix is doing this. I mean, like they'll divvy up, seasons of The Circle, heaven knows. But yeah, I think if they really want to sort of generate word of mouth about a narrative series, it's even better would be to just drop them weekly, But this is at least, I think, a step up where people will be like, no, and let's talk about what happened and what's going to happen next, So yeah, good on them.
Right. It feels overwhelming. Like you feel behind if all your friends have already watched the entire run in one day on the couch.
Exactly.
So, we will definitely, we will do all of that though on our Patreon. So patreon.com/bfestalday. If you are not already a patron, we would love to see you there. And then we have some sad news. We have not done news in about a week. So we missed the sad news of Norman Lear dying at age 101, a legendary TV producer. To call him producer doesn't even sound like enough of a word for the way that he shaped the entire medium in the 70s with shows like All in the Family and Maude and One Day at a Time. What are your memories of those shows from that era, Alonso?
I mean, I was a kid when they were on the air, so I don't think I fully appreciated how, much they were pushing the envelope of what was even allowed on on television. I knew people talked about them as though they were controversial, and Archie Bunker immediately became this very sort of like divisive figure, and people like, maybe didn't get what the humor was supposed to be, or other people embraced everything he said and didn't understand that it was intended to be humorous, but I think he very much kind of fits into this very specific kind of Nixon era of, after the tumult of the late 60s, like everything was sort of up for grabs, and TV was really ready to kind of start expanding the directions, like Mary Hartman was a big thing, which was this kind of, it was a 5-day-a-week sort of soap opera parody that went into places that TV wasn't used to. I remember at the age of 10 watching a Lear show called All That Glitters, that an episode just popped up on YouTube. It's been very hard to find, very obscure for a long time, but that was an attempt to do another sort of 5-show-a-week thing. And the premise of the show was that it basically was a society where women ran everything and men were, second-class citizens, basically. So you had like house husbands and himbos, and then women were the execs and the jocks and everything else, And so it was one of the first things I'd ever seen that kind of addressed the notion of like questioning gender roles. Also the first thing I ever saw that had male objectification in it, because Gary Sandy, who would later be on WKRP in Cincinnati, played like the hot secretary, and all the female execs were like, would watch him leave a room and the camera would like focus on his ass. And I was like, okay, this is new and different, So yeah, just
what's this funny feeling I'm experiencing?
Exactly. So, and not a show that did well, but it had an impact on me. And it did have an early, it's funny, 77, he had like 2 very early trans characters on TV. There was a Jefferson's episode where an old army buddy of George shows up and after, transitioning. And Linda Gray played a trans woman on All That Glitters, whose story was like, I was tired of, I wanted to live in a world where I was empowered, and so I needed to become a woman. So, for the 70s, this was a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have a show that's about, abortion or racism or divorce, and but also be funny and true, though, like biting in the whip, but also there's an authenticity and a relatability to it. So, and also supposedly all anecdotal evidence points to him being a lovely, gentle, sweet man. So Norman Lear, a legend, gone at 101, and then Ryan O'Neal died this past week at 82.
Yes.
Of course, huge in the 60s and 70s, and sort of troubled years later on, but
yeah, it did some great films.
Era, for sure.
Did some great films with Peter Bogdanovich, What's Up, Doc, and Paper Moon, starred in Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. I mean, definitely had a tempestuous life, but I think some performances that will live on. And I want to give a quick shout out. I just, as we were going to air, found out about the passing of Shirley Ann Field, who was a real icon of the British New Wave. She was in Saturday Night and Sunday Morning and Alfie, and the very controversial Peeping Tom. Later popped up in My Beautiful Laundrette, which was a groundbreaking queer film for the late 80s. She was on the soap opera Santa Barbara for a long time. She's in a movie I love that a lot of people I think have forgotten called Hear My Song. So anyway, RIP to her as well.